Good evening, gang. Listen, exciting opportunity on Ask Captain Reeman today, where if you want to reach your aviation goals, you have to ask the right questions. I get to ask some questions of none other than Maneuvering Mick. Michaela, thank you so much, and welcome to Ask Captain Reeman.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, you fit into a unique space, not only in the aviation world, but also out there, I think, in people that are an inspiration on social media to so many. And I wanted to hear just a little bit about your journey. Where are you now, and how did you get there?
Yeah, so right now I am a Navy T-6 Instructor Pilot. I'm instructing primary training, which for anyone non-military, that's the first Navy aircraft or military aircraft that you fly as a military aviator. And right now that's a T-6B. It's a high performance aerobatic aircraft, and it's way more plain than people are used to at the very beginning. So very, very sporty, very, very fun. A little bit of how I got here, just to start at the very beginning. Itty bitty small town. I had an older brother that actually went to the Naval Academy. So that introduced me to the military and to the Navy. I decided to go the more, I would like to say, normal route. I'm probably going to get in trouble with people for that in the comments, but the more normal route with ROTC. And while I was doing my normal college degree, I went to the University of Pittsburgh, tried to figure out how I wanted to serve my country, and landed on aviation. So, contrary to popular understanding of pilots, I've not been a lifelong, like, always wanted to be a pilot kind of person. So, the service part came first for me, which is cool. And then I went to flight school after that, after I commissioned post college. Selected P8s, which is a big wing. It's a Boeing 737 kind of bastardized version of it. We primarily hunt submarines and collect intel. Did that for a couple deployments, and then now I am back instructing in the T6, which is both a privilege and exhausting.
Yeah, I talk with a lot of civilian route pilots, and we joke that when you're training primary students, you're basically trying to not die in the traffic pattern. But I can only imagine in a high performance aircraft with a ton of right rudder and higher speeds that you have no shortage of opportunities for growth. And but what a rewarding time to be involved in young aviators' careers and lives too. I think in the military even more so, you're not just instructing these kids on how to fly, you're really shaping them as officers and as human beings. And as you said, what a privilege. Thank you so much for doing that for our country.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Just had a couple of my babies, my on wings, that you teach them from the very beginning of the syllabus. Just last week, two of them selected, and they both selected P8. So I'm kind of like a proud mom, and also just really excited to see where their careers go.
Well, that's great. And that Boeing time may or may not serve you well later in life if you choose to do other things like hang out in Sardinia. But we all earn it at some point. And that call to service, Mick, too. I appreciate so much. I was the same way. I kind of stumbled upon aviation a little later. I wasn't the kid at air shows saying I want to do that, but what a fun way to get to serve our nation. Yeah.
It really is. I mean, what a pleasure.
So talk to me. I'm going to have you jump in now. What's a major challenge or something challenging that you faced, and how did you overcome it? How might that benefit some of our audience?
Yeah. So, one thing that has been, or that I have overcome majorly in my career thus far, was actually a hiking accident I had back in 2021. I was hiking out in the Pacific Northwest where I was stationed at the time, and it sounds dramatic, but I fell off of a cliff. Um, I broke my back and I had a brain injury.
Oh my
And
gosh.
this was approximately 3 weeks before I was supposed to go on my first deployment. So, my first overseas deployment, not just a smaller detachment. And in that fall, I was incredibly lucky in a lot of different ways in the ER. And I've got a little video about this, but in the ER, the doctor's looking at my scans and he said, "Do you lift weights by chance?" And I was like, I'm on pain meds. I'm like, "Oh, you think I'm strong?" And he's like, no, respectfully, ma'am, like the muscle around your back just saved your life or maybe saved you from being paralyzed. And so that, it was interesting, seems dramatic, right? And it was a huge thing to kind of come to terms with. But what's funny about the amount of preparation you do as an aviator and a military aviator specifically to go out and do the mission and be deployed, I was still in the mindset that I was going. Like, I'm sitting there broken and I'm still packing my bag that had to be like on the first shipment out to the deployment site. And it took a close friend of mine having me sit down and say, Michaela, you're not going on this deployment. And it wasn't until someone truly sat there and told that to my face in a loving way that I broke down. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm not going on this deployment." And then they went on and they were like, "You have to come to terms with the reality that you might never fly again." In aviation, everyone goes through the FAA medical process, some more or less depending on the scope at which you're flying. And for military aviation specifically, the waiver process of, something happens and then approving you to go back to military aviation is quite an extensive process. So I'll cut out all of the middle part of that. But it was essentially months of uncertainty and wondering if I would actually ever fly again. And as
Wow.
a recently winged aviator, someone who had done the stuff, had finally gotten to, you spend years training, gotten to the performance side of things, the part where you actually get to do the stuff, and have that kind of ripped away and maybe never something I could do again, was definitely one of the biggest hurdles that I have to date had to overcome. And how do you do that, right? Like, then 3 weeks later, my entire support system deployed and they were out doing the stuff. And I was back home trying to recover and do my own thing. And so it was months and months of getting up every single day and saying, listen, if I am just a little bit better today, if I'm doing all of the things I can possibly do today, that is all that's within my control. And that
Right.
is all that I can do to just keep moving. Because when you zoom out and you look at the big picture and you're like, this thing that I've worked so hard for is in jeopardy, that becomes overwhelming and you get lost in the sense of overwhelm with that. But every single day getting up and being like, I will get better and I will do everything in my power to fight for this because it's something that's important to me, was the thing that just kept me going after day, month after month. And I was thrown into a new squadron, which was fantastic. They welcomed me with open arms, and some of those people are still some of my closest friends today. And I kind of jokingly say, like, I would rather break my back again before I have another brain injury, because I would rather physically rehab than mentally rehab any day of the week.
Yeah.
And so that months and months and months trying to figure it out, and when push came to shove, the spine actually healed up quicker, I think, than the brain did. And I went through a ton of cognitive testing and I was working on getting my waivers approved, and my squadron was dealing with a difficult conflict at the time. And they brought me out and they said, hey, maybe you can't fly, but you can still be part of the team and you can still contribute in whatever capacity. You can still be learning the tactics. You can still be doing that type of upgrading, which is an aspect of military aviation that's definitely different. You're not just an aviator, you're a tactician as well. And so I went out there, and I'm still like, well, I'm with my crew, but I don't know if I'll fly. I don't know. And then one day on like a random Tuesday, my commanding officer calls me in, and they're like, hey, your waivers came through. You're slated to fly tomorrow morning. And by the way, you're going to go hunt for a Russian submarine somewhere, blah, 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 blah. Can't talk about. And I was like, my first flight back? Are you sure about that? And they're like, yeah, you'll be good to go. And
Well,
then
that's
from there on out, it was a mad dash to meet my qualifications, to get my hours, to catch up to my peers. And I've just kept going since.
Well, that's great. It sounds like, you had a great support network, and that is one of the things. The camaraderie and the culture of the military is great, but you showed a lot of patience and resilience. Not that you had a ton of choice in that, but hung in there and saw it through. And I'm sure that shaped you not only as an aviator, but also as an officer and as a person today.
Absolutely. It's one of the things that, like, they always say you never know what someone's going through, or you never know what someone has experienced. And as somebody that looks totally fine now and is flying ejection seat aircraft, you never would know that I had a broken spine in the past. And it's a beautiful lesson in realizing that people bring different things to the table, different experiences, and are also dealing with things that you have no idea about. So it's definitely one of those, you have to have grace for other people's experiences and realize that you have to approach people in a way that's going to support wherever they're at.
Well, definitely a lesson I can take from you, because in my late 50s, if you will, I'm still working on empathy, but it's coming to me. Well, one other thing that I think that comes up in looking at some of your content, and you talked about too, is physical fitness, outdoor activities. I love that outside the cockpit, that you're always out there taking advantage of wherever you are to not only stay in shape, but kind of get the most out of life. Talk to me just a little bit about some of the things that you really enjoy outside of the cockpit.
Yeah, these are the things that make you a human. So there's always the joke that how do you know someone's a pilot? Well, they'll tell you about it. And that's like 80% of their personality, right? But I think the things that you choose to spend to do in your free time are the things that keep you sane and keep you out of those cycles that you're always working on as a pilot. So for me, right now, I'm an avid sailor, sailboat racing. We do regattas on the weekends, we do Wednesday night racing, and I've been so lucky to get plugged in with a community here in South Texas that has a robust regatta of sailboats that I've learned on. And when I first started back when I was in flight school, coming from Pennsylvania, there's not a lot of water and sailing options in Pennsylvania. So I had never been on a sailboat before. And over the last 8 years or so have built my skills into being able to go and race with people and have a fun time and have that be my community here. And that really has just been, I mean, the difference of having something to look forward to every week is huge. And then having that also be something that's outside and on the water is incredibly therapeutic. But you don't get that everywhere. So when I was up in the Pacific Northwest, I'm a big skier, big hiker. Obviously, hiking was a little bit soured after a little bit of an accident, but most years on the anniversary of the fall, I try to go out and do a hike somewhere as kind of a celebration. So that's always been awesome. I have a nice road bike I like to take out. I'm an avid weightlifter. Some weeks more than others, kind of depending on the schedule at work. But anything that yoga, anything that really is able to bring you into the moment and have it be something that makes you better over time, but it's not pulling teeth. Because there's so many things we do in life that takes monumental effort that you have to also have, in my opinion, experiences where you can let that brain relax and breathe and move, and those are the things that help bring us back to ourselves and have kind of that yin peacefulness that comes with the chaos of a career in aviation.
Absolutely. And I think the fact you're doing things outdoors and that involve physical activity, and if you enjoy it, right, it definitely can be relaxing and balance you out. Well, speaking of lessons, I'm going to give you an opportunity now. I want you to give us one takeaway, one great piece of advice for people that are looking to get on the track you're on or looking to break into aviation. What's the best piece of advice you can give to young people, old people, anybody who's looking to get into our industry?
If I had to give one piece of advice, I think I would say your journey is never going to go the way that you plan it to. And so, one of the most important things we can do to be successful is to roll with the punches and just keep moving. Because if one thing doesn't work out and that's the thing that stops you, you're never going to make it to the end. Because that end might be a totally different finish line than when you started. So, you'll never be able to plan it all exactly, but just keep moving.
I love that. I've heard it said too that like you're going to get doors closed sometime. Other doors open when that happens, but you're certainly not going to see them with your head in your lap pouting, right? So you got to just keep rolling with the punches. I love that. Well, Michaela, thank you so much. I know we worked hard to get our schedules aligned to make this happen. I look forward to future conversations, and certainly I celebrate your success every time I see what you're doing out there in the cockpit and on the water. And thanks for sharing some vulnerable parts of your journey too. I know my audience is really going to love that, and let's keep this relationship going. And thanks again for the inspiration you provide to all of us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I did want to give a quick extra thank you because I read into your history a little bit and the whole beginnings of the Space Force really hit home for me because I don't know if you know this, but my baby sister is in the Space Force.
Oh, there you go. Well, I hope that the culture there is warm and embracing and encourages her to stick around. So,
I hope so too.
all right. Well, thanks again, Mick. And you guys give us a shout out on either one of our channels. I know that both of us work hard to get back to your questions and appreciate all that you do.
Thanks for having me.